Okay, may I have your attention, everyone? Welcome. Welcome to Marist College, if you're not already a student at Marist College, and if you are, welcome to this room. Okay. I'm so glad you could all make it after our snowstorm delay from last week. This day actually worked out better, so somebody was looking out for us, so it was really great. So welcome. I have a very exciting group of speakers to speak with you tonight. So it's not going to be me, but I'm going to start by making a couple of announcements. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Susan Scanlon. You'll be hearing my name a lot during the course of the next couple of months if you're participating in the competition, because I am your key contact in terms of participating in the actual event. So you can find my information up here on the website, and the website is just marist.edu and the initials of the Mid-Hudson Regional Business Plan Competition. It's on that little black card that you each took, so you can get the website there. And it's an important thing to go on as soon as you possibly can. And so one of the most important things to look at is the presentation requirements on the left side. Click in there. It will give you some insight into what you should be researching and what you should be prepared to present for the competition, which of course is on Friday, April 13th, a good Friday the 13th, lucky day, here at Marist College in our Student Center. We have the application ready for you, and we made it even simpler this year for those of you who have participated in the past. All you do is click the little blue button, and it's a really simple online form, and we don't even really ask you a lot of information. We ask you a lot of, name, contact information, team name or company name, and ask you to just briefly describe your business. But that's why the first thing to do is to look at the presentation requirements, because you're going to have to be prepared to do a lot more than just describe your business at the actual competition. Welcome. By the way, if you haven't already signed in and taken your handouts, please make sure you do that, and feel free to grab a bite to eat. So that's important. I just want you to make sure you get your application in before the deadline, which is Friday, March 23rd, 11:59 p.m. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean you wait till 11:59 p.m. on March 23rd to submit it, because you'll blow up our system if everybody waits till 11:59. So do it as early as you can. It's pretty simple. And if you are truly going to apply for the competition and you really are going to participate, we have an in-kind sponsor who has agreed to allow you free access to a tool, a software tool that can help you hone your pitch, help you formulate your ideas. So if you're interested in using that, you need to contact me through your advisor. So if it's West Point, through Dr. Young, if it's Marist, whoever your advisor is, if you can let me know. However, if you've already submitted your application, then you can just contact me directly. And I will give you an access code to the software. It's from a company called Live Plan, based out of Oregon. And it's a pretty cool little tool if you choose to use it, okay? So just let me know if that's something of interest, okay? And we appreciate their support. You may have also heard that this year we have the regional competition, and we do have some prizes at the regional level for our winning teams, but we don't have a state competition at this moment. New York State has gone through a transition. What else is new, right? And SUNY Poly, who used to run the state competition for the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it is, has handed it off to University at Albany. And they weren't quite ready yet to run the state competition. They need another year. So you should know, though, that if you participate in the competition this year and you're still a student next year, you can do it again next year and hopefully get to the state competition. There are a couple of plans in the works, potentially, to run a second-tier competition, either a mini state competition with a few regions, or perhaps there are things in the works to potentially run a state competition. So don't give up hope yet. If we all put energy out there in a positive direction, maybe something will happen, right? All these great entrepreneurial minds. Hey, how you doing? All right, so we have that available for you. Then we also have this conference. It's a breakfast forum at Mount St. Mary College that is taking place this Friday. And it's about disruptive technology. And we have several entrepreneurs that are speaking about the technology that they are using in their entrepreneurial endeavor. And apparently, from what I understand, it's going to be really, really exciting and really interesting. And one of our other sponsors from ICANN New York, which is a, is it an incubator, would you say? Yeah. They have offered a free registration. So you don't have to go through the actual registration process where you pay for anybody who's involved with the business plan competition. But we have to know by Wednesday, so that gives us very little time. So you need to just let me know if you're interested in attending this event, and it's a breakfast, so it's early, and it's at Mount St. Mary College, all right? So I can send you all the information you need about that if you're interested in it.
Quick question.
Yes?
Will they pool like those vans from Marist to bring a bunch of them down, or have you asked about that?
I haven't, because I don't know if there's interest.
Oh.
Yeah, if we have enough interest, we can see about that. All right. Whoops. All right, so let me introduce our first speaker. Okay. Some of you at Marist may know her. I don't know. Maybe. So we have Dr. Jennifer Robinette, who is a professor in the School of Communication and the Arts here at Marist College. And she is not only an academic, okay, she is, also has broad experience out in the world of work and in very interesting arenas. So she has been a market research analyst. She's been a lobbyist, which means she really must know how to communicate. And she's been a political campaign manager. I bet you're happy you're in academia right now, right? Yes. A pharmaceutical sales rep and a medical equipment sales executive. So she has a really diverse background. And she's also the person here at Marist College who is the Speaking Across the Curriculum coordinator. It's one of our goals here at Marist for our students with a liberal arts core to make sure that they know how to communicate effectively. And so it's throughout all of the curricula here at Marist, throughout all the different schools. Even if you're a computer scientist, you need to know how to speak and communicate effectively. Even if you're a biologist, no matter what your area of expertise is, communication is key. She also is responsible for the first year seminar Power Presenting Workshop, and she's the director of that. So clearly, she's a really good communicator. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Robinette and have her take you through her presentation.
Okay, well, welcome to Marist. As she said, I'm Dr. Jennifer Robinette. I teach communication and public relations classes on campus here. And I've actually been teaching public speaking since 1994. Which sadly is, long before many of you were born in the room. So I've been doing this for a very long time. And we put a lot into teaching our presentation skills from the minute our freshmen get onto campus here. So we're really, really focused on it at Marist. It's a big priority. You recognize this guy? All right, so Elon Musk, when he was in college, he said he wanted to be part of something that would change the world. I bet that's what you want to. So, how do you change the world? Well, you got to get people to believe in your ideas as much as you do. So you have to have the perfect pitch. What is the perfect pitch? Well, it's on target, right? And it's psychologically in tune with your target audience. This is a psychology symbol, in case you didn't know, and a tuning fork. All right, so we'll talk about knowing your story and getting that together, your why, and why that is such an important part of your story. We'll talk about aiming your pitch and being audience-centered. Then we're going to talk about planning your pitch, being strategic and being clear, as well as about delivering your pitch. So first, what's your story? We respond to story innately as human beings. So you've got to get your story together for your pitch. That's job one. I found this great presentation as a TED Talk by Nancy Duarte, and she has researched some of the most successful presentations of our time, and she has a lot of wisdom to convey. So we're going to start off with the wisdom she conveys about story. And that reaction goes away when it's just a straight presentation, if you don't incorporate your story. So that gut feeling, that reaction that you have that this is really the right thing to be doing or the right person to be following, comes from our limbic system. Our limbic system is one of the most primitive parts of our brain, and it responds automatically. It responds automatically to certain things. and you have to be able to unlock the limbic system if you want to move people. A lot of research has been done on how to unlock the limbic system, and so we're going to talk about how you do that. You do that by identifying your why. Simon Sinek's inspirational leadership model, if you haven't seen it, it's really very interesting, and it's based on scientific research about what gets our limbic system reaction out of us, what gives us a good gut feeling about things. And he said, people won't follow you for what you do, and they won't follow you for how you do it, but they will follow you for why you do what you do. So you have to know your why. Get in touch with your why. What is your purpose? What is your cause? What is your belief? And you need to articulate that in your pitch if you want people to buy into it and follow your lead. So get your story together, know your why. All right, so next, aiming your pitch. This is where the psychology comes in. So cognitive psychology was my cognate in my doctoral program. Super interesting stuff. There's a lot of psychology in communication and the study and execution of it as well. So if you want to aim your pitch effectively, you need to be audience-centered. That means you need to tune into your target audience. And to do that, you have to know them. So you have to do your research. How can you research your target audience? Well, you have their organizational media that you can look at. And the first thing you want to do is find any website that is associated with people who are going to be judging your pitch and see what's on there. You're looking for things like their annual report, their mission statement, who's on their board. All of these things are going to tell you about their values. What do they value? You also, of course, have social media. So you have LinkedIn, and you have Twitter, and you have Facebook, and you have YouTube. So you can look at those things, as well as if they have Instagram or Snapchat, and check out what they've posted. What can you identify that they value? And then what you're going to do is you're going to look at what they value, and you're going to find where their values and your story meet. And that's how you're going to tune your pitch. Find where their values and your story meet. And then we're going to construct your pitch based on that. We all have attitude anchor points. This is a basic Likert scale that we use to measure attitudes and opinions in communication. So you have strongly disagree at one extreme, strongly agree at the other extreme, and neutral in the middle. You can think about your pitch and the ideas that you want to convey, and think about your target audience and imagine where they might fall on this scale in their beliefs and opinions about your ideas. If your message hits what they tend to disagree with, of course, that's going to result in message rejection. If your message hits what you know they agree with, you're more likely to have message acceptance. So what we want to do is incorporate the things we know they already agree with. And we want to inoculate against the things we know they might have some disagreement with. So let's look at an example. I also teach applied research and analytics. And applied research and analytics in communication is often associated with advertising and marketing research. Well, Elon Musk really needs some help right now, actually. He has some problem solving to do, and I want to try to pitch him on using applied research and applied communication research specifically. But here's what I found when I did my audience analysis. He does no advertising, and he's very anti-marketing, and he is successful without it. So how am I going to pitch him on my product that is associated most of the time with marketing and advertising? What else do I know about him? I know that he really loves applied scientific research. I know that he values helping humanity. I know that he values innovation and risk-taking. He values risk-taking so much that he even embraces failure, right? So if I know that he values those things, I can use that in my pitch. Public relations and employee relations might be where he comes down on the neutral region, and that represents opportunity for me. So employee relations, I found some quotes and things that show that he's very concerned about his employees and their experience and their level of satisfaction. So we'll put those in the middle. Now what I want to do when I inoculate is I want to inject or incept, if you will, implicit counter-arguments into my pitch. I don't want to say, I know you hate advertising and you never do it, and I know you're anti-marketing, but I'm going to, pitch you on this instead. Nope, you don't want to say that. So you want to slyly address these things without directly refuting them. It's not a debate, it's a persuasive goal. Okay, so here we go. I'm taking advertising and marketing out of my vocabulary for this pitch altogether, not saying it at all. Because the fact is that applied communication research can be used for many other things. All right, Tesla is losing money, still hemorrhaging it quite severely, actually, and has been for a long time. So he does have some issues that it could still help him with, even though he is overall successful. He could use applied communication research to solve problems by helping him to prevent mistakes in the future by making calculated decisions, and it could save him money. So this could be part of how I'm going to inoculate him on this issue. Now, on the incorporate side, this works out well, the applied scientific research, because that's what applied communication research is. Helping humanity, knowing that he values that. I could probably sell him on improving human communication, particularly with the public and his employees. Also, innovation. Applied communication research is used for that all the time. And risk-taking. I'm going to change the risk-taking term, though, to calculated risk-taking, and that's what I'm going to focus on in my pitch. All right, so planning your pitch. We're going to talk about some strategies for putting this together, and then actually I fully developed the Elon Musk example, and it is posted on the website for you.
Not yet, but it will be.
It will be posted on the website for you. So all the different parts of the pitch that we're about to look at, you can see examples of how I would develop that for pitching him on applied communication research. All right, so planning your pitch. The first thing you need to know is that the number one most important thing that you will say is the last thing you say. And the number two most important thing you say is the first thing you say. Your audience is most likely to remember the last thing you say, second most likely to remember the first thing you say. Okay. All right, you want to make sure that your attention getter and your closing work together. If the first thing you say and the last thing you say work together, you can give your audience a sense of completion, or psychological unity is what we call it, wholeness, a sense of wholeness. And that's what you want to go for when you're looking at your attention getters and your closings. So let's start with the second most important thing you're going to say, and that is the first thing you say. It should not be introducing yourself. That is not your attention getter, right? Your attention getter is something that draws your audience in and engages them in the topic for your pitch. So you have different options or strategies that you can use for gaining attention. You can startle your audience with statistics or images. You can use quotes. You can arouse curiosity in your audience by asking questions. You can tell a story. A good way to build suspense is tell the beginning of a story, but leave off the ending. Save the ending for your call to action in your closing. All right, so these are your various options for gaining attention. Let's now go to the number one most important thing that you're going to say, and that's the last thing you say. It should definitely not be any questions or thank you, right? You can say thank you. I'm not telling you not to be polite, but you don't need to have it in giant letters behind your head, because this is a wasted opportunity. If you have any questions or thank you in giant letters behind your head, you're wasting your last opportunity to leave an impression on your audience. So you want for your last statement, your closing, to be a meaningful, memorable call to action with impact. Here's my example of what my closing would look like for my Elon Musk pitch. Notice applied communication research. this is a theme I developed throughout the example, which is your untapped scientific solution. You recognize Starman, right? Has everyone seen Starman? All right. The next strategy we're going to talk about, other than psychological unity, is Monroe's motivated sequence. Now, this is how you're going to organize the parts in between your attention getter and your closing. Monroe's motivated sequence was designed to motivate action. People have been using it for years, and it has 5 steps. The first step is the attention getter, or the hook. So that fits, right? We already have that piece. Then the second step is establishing need, or demonstrating demand for what it is you have to offer. The third step of Monroe's motivated sequence is the solution step, where you supply the solution for the demand you just demonstrated. The fourth step is the visualization step, and this is where you help your audience visualize your solution in action. And the fifth step is that closing call to action that we mentioned. So these are the 5 steps, and we're going to expand on this now and figure out exactly how to put it to work. Nancy Duarte, in looking at the shape of great presentations, identified this pattern of what is, what could be, what is, what could be. And I thought, gosh, you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of Monroe's motivated sequence. And if you put those 2 things together, you might have an unbeatable pitch. Let's go back to our Monroe's motivated sequence. The first main point that you're going to have is step 2 in Monroe's motivated sequence, which is establishing that need, demonstrating demand. That's the what is. This is what is currently happening. The second main point that you'll have, which is step 3 in Monroe's motivated sequence, is the what could be part. Okay. Then we get to the visualization step, and this is where you really kick in with what she's talking about, and you talk about what is, what could be. You traverse back and forth, contrasting the 2. Currently what is, and then what could be if your idea was adopted. And then the last part is the new bliss, the call to action about how wonderful things would be if your idea was implemented. So this is her shape of great presentations with Monroe's motivated sequence. And she used that to analyze quite a famous speech. So let's see how that went.
Here's Mr. John.
So you can see Monroe's motivated sequence, and it's in action in this situation here. All right, there are a few other things that you need to accomplish in your pitch in order for it to be really great. So right after you gain attention, you need to establish your credibility, which means you need to establish your expertise and connect with your audience. So build common ground with them. Credibility is all about you. It's information about you that gives the audience a reason to listen to you on this topic. So you want to build common ground with them based on shared experiences. So you think to yourself, what might my audience have experienced with my topic that I too have experienced? And you want to point that out, specifically using words like you. Like you, I've been frustrated by, right? And then you build common ground with them. Then you want to talk about your expertise. So you talk about your knowledge, any research you've done, any training you've had, any education that applies, your interest in the issue, and your experience with it. All of those things are going to build your credibility on the topic. Okay, so now we've talked about your story, your why, being audience-centered, and being strategic with concepts like inoculation, psychological unity, Monroe's motivated sequence, and credibility. Now we're going to talk about being clear. And the last strategic thing I'm going to tell you about is psychological reactance, which is something that you need to be aware of and conscious of as you're striving to be clear with your audience. Because you could actually be too clear with your audience, and that will undercut your persuasive goals. Being clear is important for persuasion, though. The art of persuasion lies in simplifying something down to its core and communicating to others what they really care about. So it's cutting to that what they really care about part and being able to guide them through your presentation and be clear. But warning, if you're too clear, you could fall, I guess, victim to psychological reactants, which you don't want to kick in. Essentially, we're all sort of teenagers at heart, and we don't want to be told what to do or that we're going to be influenced. So it's human nature, really, to resist being influenced. So if I tell you, I'm going to convince you today, or I'm going to persuade you today, then your mind is already in refutation mode. And everything that the person says, you're refuting in your mind, all right? So we don't want that to kick in. You don't have to be explicit, though, to be clear. So I'll give you an example. We'll go back to the Elon Musk thing. This is an abbreviated example of the preview, but I might say something like, today I'm here to give you the scoop on one area of scientific research that has untapped potential for you and your business. That would be my thesis statement. But you see, I'm not saying, I'm going to talk to you about this applied communication research yet, or what it's used for. In my preview, I might say something like, you will see how applied communication research can elevate your innovation by calculating risks, adapting, and improving based on science. So I'm using those terms that I'm pretty sure from my research he already agrees with, right? And I'm pointing out where his values and my story meet. Okay, so after you establish your credibility, you have your thesis. The example that I just gave you is a more effective way to state something rather than saying, I'm here to convince you or persuade you today. And then in your preview, this is where you give them a brief little roadmap of where you're going to take them, but you don't want to give it all away. So, hence the example that I just gave you. You're going to briefly talk about or allude to what is, what could be, and the visualization in your preview step. Because in order for them to be with you in the moment, they have to be able to follow you. So if they can't follow what you're saying, then you're going to lose them. So that's what these parts of the pitch are about. All right, and then after you go through need, solution, visualization, you have a summary where you have the chance to briefly reinforce what is, what could be, and the visualization before you get to your call to action, which is the final thing in your Monroe's motivated sequence steps. All right, so last, delivering your pitch. You want to be sure that your delivery comes off smoothly. You want pitch perfect visuals. So handwritten things, probably not a good idea, right? I saw this and I thought, this must have been a competition where they had so much time to put together their pitch and then they had to automatically do it. It has to be. But it's a perfect example of what you don't want to do, right? So there you go. Don't do that. You want to have a polished visuals for your pitch. So you need mostly images. You need bold sans serif fonts, meaning the ones without the fancy tails, like Times New Roman has the fancy tails, and they don't project quite as well. So you want sans serif fonts. You want limited text, mostly images. What this presentation is for instructional purposes. So there's a lot of content on it. But for your pitch, you're not trying to teach them anything, you're trying to win them over, so you need mostly images. Also, you don't want to pass around anything while you're talking about and delivering your pitch. You only want to pass things around after you deliver your closing call to action, because here's what's going to happen. You're going to be talking about your really important visualization point, and the judges are looking at your, did you get it? Okay, yeah, did you see that? Right? They're going to miss your big points that you need them to see. So anything that you want them to see visually, have a large picture of it and keep their attention at the front with you all during your pitch. After you give your closing call to action, pass around all that you want to. Okay, so pitch perfect appearance. Which one of these teams would you invest in? Well, yeah, I mean, we would all prefer that, but when I say you need to dress up, don't dress up like your target market, right? That's not going to encourage anyone to invest in you. Dress like your profession, yes, but don't dress up like your target market. The other thing you don't want to do is dress up in costume. I've had students before say, well, should we dress like whatever it is they're presenting on? No, we're not dressing in costume. You're dressing professionally for your presentation. So you want to dress in a way that gives the judges confidence in you. All right, podiums are evil, by the way, in case no one has ever told you that. They are evil barriers between you and your audience. And studies have shown time after time that speakers who get out from behind podiums are rated as more successful and more likable. So you want to get out from behind the podium. You also want to establish a sense of presence with your audience by moving closer to them. That establishes a sense of immediacy, which is always a good thing. Not creepy close, like you don't want to be like, you know, right here, right? That's creepy, sorry. But yeah, so podiums are evil, stay away from them. Now, if you have a team presentation, you can take different approaches to team presentations. Let's say you have 2 people, you could do it in relay style, back and forth if you wanted to. So one person would start, go back and forth. Or if you have more than one person, you could just, you know, go ahead in a straight line. Each one of you take part of the pitch. Or if you want to be a little creative about it and more engaging, you could do it in staggered format. So start, then go to the ends, then go back to the middle. Or if you have one person who's super strong, have them open, then each person on the team delivers part of the middle. And then that person is also your closer. But if there is really only one strong person in delivery on the team, you may want them to carry the whole thing. And if that is the case, then you can have one spokesperson, and everyone else on the team is there to answer questions in their area of expertise after the pitch is over. Okay, so remember this guy who wanted to change the world in college just like you. So there you go. Perfect your pitch, and one day you might be marveling as you watch your dreams come true in front of your eyes too. All right. This is to facilitate questions so that you can remember all the different things we talked about.
We have like 6 minutes for questions.
Okay. I was about right on time. Okay. Okay. Yes.
Hi, Matt. You talked about not giving the judges your gags, whatever it is. I know we see in Shark Tank all the time that in the middle of the presentation, the judges will erupt and ask to see it. So is that a hard and fast rule? And then also, if you have a very technical thing, wouldn't it be better to give it to them so they can see how it works, so they're not sitting there staring at it trying to figure it out?
It's a good point. What they're asking for it for is because they want to see what you're talking about, because you're not showing them what you're talking about up there at the time. So what I tell my students, and I teach them to do, is that just about anything that you want to show them on something, you can take a photo of it or find a photo somewhere online of it and show it to them in the presentation, so that while you're talking about whatever it is, you are showing it to them right there, so they don't have to have it in their hot little hands at that moment, right? But to your point, if they asked me to see it, would I say no? Probably not. I would say, here you go. Yeah. You're welcome. I like them. I want more. Yeah. That was very nice.
So what if I have this crazy idea, but I do not I do not have the technological capabilities or expertise on how to go about it, but I know, I have a vision, but I don't know how to go about it. What do I do? How do I even try to get this visualization come through?
Oh, you mean, so how do you help other people visualize it?
Yes.
So I can tell you have in your mind something visualized, right? Okay, so sometimes you have to just really work at getting it out onto paper, forcing yourself to write things down, say it out loud. Does it make sense? See if you can put it together and show it. So sometimes by creating your PowerPoint, you can draw your vision out by starting there, as at the beginning. So once you are able to articulate it and see it and write it out, then you will be able to go back and put it in a better order and perfect it. But you have to somehow get this vision that you've got in your mind, but it's just not clear yet. Try and draw it out of yourself first. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
Many times in the competition, people don't actually have the prototype.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I'm
Yes.
having issues with that.
So it's just a matter of really communicating clearly.
Yeah,
when I got to that.
Yeah.
And I would just say, if I understand your concern as well, that it's also about developing a team
Yeah.
or identifying the gaps in your team that you plan to fill,
Okay.
possibly with the funding that you're going to be asking for.
That's a good
But
idea.
it does come to what Dr. Robinette said. It starts out by articulating a clear vision of the new bliss, so to speak, and then taking it.
So adding to what you just said, I had a question. So you said we shouldn't be too clear. So I'm wondering.
That's what I said? Really? I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering, in the course of not being too clear,
Right.
do we create like a loophole and make the audience give us suggestion or feedback, or maybe I did not really understand.
I'm
that.
so sorry. I didn't mean to teach you not to be too clear. I really didn't. I meant to teach you to sort of be artfully clear and
Or keep them
not
in suspense.
build suspense and anticipation. That's always good, right? And focusing on the terms and the concepts that you know that they already accept and believe in. And just sort of steering clear. Now, that's not to say that once you get to the question phase, they might not ask you about those things that you purposely were not mentioning, so you have to be prepared for how you're going to handle the questions about that at the end.
And if you don't have answers to some of the questions.
Ahead of time? You probably won't know what they're going to ask you ahead of time. No.
And I'll get it to somebody.
Oh, okay. Cool. Great.
We
Yeah.
only have time for one more question.
Okay. Yeah.
That was actually my question. What if the judges ask a question that you don't exactly know the answer to? We always like see on Shark Tank, like they'll ask them like a numbers question, and then someone will freeze up and they like automatically don't get a deal. What if you don't know the answer?
Okay, so we practice this all the time in public relations when I'm teaching my students about press conferences. Journalists are going to ask you questions you don't have the answer to yet, especially in a crisis situation. There is nothing wrong with saying, I will get that for you. I don't have that right now, but I will get that for you. Yeah, but don't ever try to act like you know if you don't.
Question is usually the first thing that you can say.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Acknowledge the excellence of their question. Yes, that's a great strategy. Anytime you
I'll
can
get
compliment
that for
them.
you, or that's on our list of things to,
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
So our next speaker, you've already heard from a little bit. It's a little sneak preview. This is Johnny LeHane, and he's the founder and co-owner of a distributed company called Waka. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yep.
Okay, Waka Kickball and Social Sports. Isn't that great? His company has made the Inc. 5000 for 3 consecutive years, so he's very successful. He's also the managing member and lead investor in the Hudson Valley Startup Fund, which is a $1 million member managed seed capital angel investment fund for high growth startups in the Hudson Valley, launched in 2015. And Johnny is also a judge at the Mid-Hudson Regional Business Plan Competition and has also been a judge at the state competition. Prior to starting his company, Johnny worked as technical manager and senior Unix system administrator for AOL. And he excels at understanding and developing business solutions, and I've seen it firsthand, helping technical and non-technical people understand each other, advocating ideas, and bringing people of diverse backgrounds and philosophies together in a fun environment. You could tell he's fun, right? So without further ado, I am going to have Johnny take the microphone.
All right. Dr. Robinette, thank you. You're going to make my presentation a little bit easier, and you had me wanting to change a few things. I'm not going to get creepy close and walk into the middle of the room like I planned on doing. And I really wish I had that whole presentation before I got started. But I do want to say, in terms of pitching, all of that information is super valuable. I'm going to go more into the specifics of pitching in a business plan competition and to investors. And I really want to start out by saying you've done this before, because what you're really trying to do is convince somebody that an idea is a good idea. So can anybody tell me of any instance in their life where they've tried to convince somebody that something was a good idea? All right, right here, what do you got?
Convince my parents to attend Marist College.
Convince your parents to let you go to Marist College, absolutely. I was going to say to convince my parents to let me go out past curfew or something like that. And I saw another one over here from one of the cadets.
Trying to convince my parents to give me a week like back in the day.
There you go, absolutely, right. And I was going to say try to convince your friends, right? Once in a while you might try to convince your friends to go to one bar instead of another, whatever it is, right? So we've all done this before, and you do it in the manner and outline that Dr. Robinette really provided for us. So what does it take? You need a clear vision. You knew you wanted to go to Marist College. You knew you wanted a Wii U because it was like 1994 or something, and they hadn't made PlayStation 4 yet, right? You needed to engage your audience. You might have sat them down. I know when I wanted to join Ski Club when I was a kid, I had to sit my parents down and convince them why it was a good idea to spend that money. You're going to have to engage your audience with the investors or the judges to make this happen. And you're going to have to make it matter. I don't know what you did to convince your parents that buying a Wii U mattered, or a Wii. Maybe you were going to get exercise or improve your hand-eye coordination. But coming to Marist, that was pretty obvious, right? It mattered. This was the right school for you. All of this stuff is the same thing that you're going to have to do, and I think Dr. Robinette hit a lot of this stuff in her presentation and her scientific method. My method is born out of experience. I have a degree in electrical engineering, not in communication or psychology. So the last thing is that you got to be credible. So I'm going to run through this a little bit because Sue Scalen already told you, but I've got a little bit of credibility here because I've got a technical background, so I know how to design things, and that's what a lot of investments and startups are about, and that's why I became an angel investor, because I knew a good idea when I saw it based on technical experience and based on business experience. I'm a bootstrap entrepreneur. We now call ourselves Club Waka because we expanded beyond the ridiculous idea of providing kickball to adults for a living. We threw a few more sports in there, but really we're an excuse to go to a bar afterward. But I've been doing that for 20 years rather, and took it from just a backyard hobby to providing leagues in over 40 cities across the US and over $10 million annual revenue, along with my 2 business partners and a great cast of characters in our staff. I'm an angel investor and fund manager starting in 2015 thanks to Tony DeMarco's vision. Tony's here with us. He's one of my co-managers in the Hudson Valley Startup Fund. Really met with a need and passion of mine to have a greater understanding of investment and beyond the bootstrap to where you use other people's money to launch good ideas. That's how I got involved in angel investing and as a fund manager. I am now, as of like 3 days ago, one of the co-founders and members of a collaborative co-op co-working space called Co that's launching in Rhinebeck. We are the first co-working space of its kind in the Hudson Valley, and we're really excited about that. I've been working on that off and on for about 8 years, but the right team came together in just the last year. As Susan mentioned, I've also been a business plan competition judge regionally and at the state level. So I do know what the judges are looking for, both for myself personally, but also because I've gotten to know the other judges, what their backgrounds are, what their histories are, their foibles and picadillos. And just a little bit more about me. Good Work Institute is a local institute that grew out of Etsy.org, which allows craftsmen and women to sell their own products. This is the nonprofit that grew out of there, and it's right here in the Hudson Valley to help create durable and sustainable economies. Really great program. If you can become a part of it, I suggest you do. And I'm also a UNY 50 leadership member from Upstate Venture Connect, which is an organization that fosters the entrepreneurial ecosystem here and throughout upstate New York. So I think Dr. Robinette told me to establish my credibility. Hopefully that does it. So I'm going to let you know that I did steal a lot of these slides heavily from another judge, Tony Farid, who I thank profusely for his groundwork in this. But I'm going to let you know the New York State Business Planning Competition and the Mid-Hudson competition, hopefully New York State as well, is a big challenge, but it's an achievable challenge. But here it is. You're going to get 15 minutes to prove that you have a great idea that's viable in a marketplace, that you have a plan to commercialize that product or service, and that you have the ability to execute that. What is it going to take? Competent and passionate entrepreneurs, that's you guys and girls. A great idea with a core foundation and initial traction. Traction means I've proven it in the marketplace somewhere. With investors, that's critical. With judges in a business plan competition, that's sort of a nice to have. But I always like to tell participants in the business plan competition, you can choose to compete in a competition or you can choose to start a business. Which one do you think the judges are going to believe more? So treat this like you're starting a business, whether you actually are or not. At the state level, these people start their businesses. And some of them get not just prizes from the competition, but they get investors right there coming out of those competitions. So you really can use this opportunity to launch a business. It takes a lot. I think we even have some students in here that were in this room and in the competition in previous years. Some students do this competition for 4 years. And it helps them refine and launch their business and gives them a hell of a lot of great experience. Compelling vision and market opportunity. We'll go through all of these in a somewhat rote detail of the outline that is a suggested format for the business plan competition. So you got to do all that in a 10-minute pitch and 5 minutes of answering questions. It is not a lot of time to get all of this across. But the key to doing that is having all of these items is a ton of research, preparation, planning, and assembling that team as you can. You asked if you didn't have the technical wherewithal, assemble a team. It might be students that you know here, it might be advisors, but do what you can to show that you're going to have a credible team to actually produce the solution and not just come up with the problem. So a great commercially viable idea may not be enough. There are lots of other teams with great ideas. So your team does need to stand out. Your team can stand out with their experience, but really they can, in these 10 minutes, they're going to stand out with their presentation and showing that they've thought deeply about the opportunity, the idea, the marketplace, and their ability to succeed. So that's why the preparation matters. So a lot of time and effort is necessary to package a high-level pitch, and it's not easy. Step 1, idea generation, thinking, and iteration. I think a lot of you have already gone through that. Who already knows in general what their business idea, product, or solution is? All right, a good bit. And who's still working on it? Anybody? It's okay to still be thinking about it, right? So whatever phase you're in, there is still time, but this is where you're going to spend the bulk of your energy, and write it down. Dr. Robinette said it. I talk to entrepreneurs in their very early stages. They're like, I got a great idea. Can I have a sit down and a coffee? Can I have a whatever? And they talk at me for 15 or 20 minutes. And I ask them, okay, what do you have written down? Nothing. You don't have an idea yet until you've written it down, because by writing it down, you will find the flaws in your idea. Meetings, collaborations are great. Be prepared for those meetings and collaborations, but have as many of them as you can, and not just with people that you know. You have a network, leverage it, and I'll hit that a little bit in another slide. Business formulation and strategy, once you know your idea and you know you're onto something, whether through your coursework or through your research, you need to formulate what is the best business format for this and what is the strategy. How am I actually going to make this come to life? And again, I'll get into that a little more in the pitch slide-by-slide review. Research, research, research. We have this cool little thing called the internet that they invented that might help you in that. But you're going to spend hours doing this. Collaborative research is much better than sitting there by yourself looking something up. If you're not used to working in a team for research, whether you're face-to-face or halfway across the world, you can research together in real time. It gives you the opportunity to riff off each other like musicians riff off each other on a stage, to refine and reiterate your ideas. And you may spend all night going down one rabbit hole to realize that it's a dead end, or somebody already created that great idea that you thought you had, which in a competition, you can still use that idea, right? But in a real business, if it's as big a marketplace as you're going for with startup investors, that's going to be one of the things is, if somebody already has the idea, why do you have a right to win? How come you're better than them if they're already maybe more advanced or more well-funded? So that's all the stuff sort of above the fold, and then you got to start writing that business plan and financial projections. Again, for a competition, the business plan in terms of documentation has to be sufficient to allow you to write your presentation and get a credible pitch out there, and to be able to answer those questions without too many of the I don't knows. And the financial projections are going to be key as well. Again, if you're actually starting your company and you're investors, we're going to dig really, really deep in those. For a competition, you need to have the fundamentals down, and they need to be credible. You have to have done your research and show us that you've done some research and you know how much it costs to make your product, how much it costs to hire the team that's going to be working on bringing the product to market, et cetera, and what a reasonable market size is, so how many customers you could likely obtain in some given amount of time. Then you go into the items that Dr. Robinette spoke about, designing that presentation, preparation and practice, and iteration. Preparation, practice, iteration. Design that pitch, tear it apart and throw it on the floor and start over again. It is definitely an iterative process. And all that work for a 10-page pitch. It's a lot of work. I've probably already scared half of you away from the business plan competition altogether. But it's definitely worth it, not only for the credit. A few people may get some credit out of this in Dr. Gavin's class or elsewhere. And not only for the training, but really the reward of doing the pitch, getting a couple applause, getting a couple, ooh, wow, that's actually an interesting idea I haven't thought of, and walking out of the competition knowing that you could do this again. And maybe you could do this, if this wasn't really for a real business, then you could do this for a real business next time. So a lot of information on here. My presentation will be available online afterward. And again, I'm going to thank Tony Farid for this. But this digs into the details of a lot of the stuff that I just went over there. In terms of where you're going to get that unique idea, you're going to leverage a team, brainstorming, debating, iterating. Don't just try to do it alone. Somewhat similarly, my first business, Club Waka, while it was a team of 3 of us, we did it heads down. We never talked to anybody else in the business universe. And we did things that took 12 years we probably could have done in 2 if we had lifted our head up and leveraged a network of other business folks. In your case, your other business folks are your peers on your team. As I said, research, Google, wonderful thing. Mix it up and leverage the college resources that you have on all the various campuses you're on. LexisNexis, Bloomberg terminals, et cetera. You can get a lot of detail on what the marketplace looks like, what the costs may be, what's happening today in that industry. We had as of a week ago, what Elon Musk did to launch very heavy things into space. And I'm still going to tear up every time I see those 2 boosters land next to each other. That was like science fiction. That's the best reason to be alive today, is to see stuff like that happening for the first time. I mentioned connections with LinkedIn. Shoot for face-to-face meetings, but at least ask for introductions. If you haven't learned how to ask for introductions yet to strangers, if you only take that away from this competition, it's worth it. It's the most valuable thing you can do, is figure out how to credibly ask someone for help and to realize that you don't know everything and you need help. LinkedIn is an amazing tool, underutilized. If you don't have your profile and resume on LinkedIn, you should get it on there. You're going to need it when you get out of school. It's the hidden social network because everybody's on it and nobody says anything on it. So if you say anything, it echoes loud and clear. Very underutilized resource, and Microsoft does not pay me to say that. They own LinkedIn, if you were not aware. Pick up the phone and make some phone calls. And I hear Tony Farid speaking in the back of my head. Actually call them and talk to them on the phone. I know the cadets know how to speak to people face to face. I know it's ingrained in their training with great eye contact. I hope that all the other students are learning similar skills. It's something that we see in the business world. The young folks coming out of school, we're not used to looking at each other face to face because of these little screens that Steve Jobs brought to market in 2007. We got to get used to that, and we got to pick up the phone and call them and talk to them, and we can't have all of our interactions over text messages. I'm sorry. Doesn't work. Get honest feedback. Talk to people who are going to be honest to you. Professors are going to be honest to you. Potential investors are going to be honest with you. People who want your money are not going to be honest with you. So work with that however you can, but get honest feedback. Your parents love you. They're not going to give you honest feedback. I'm sorry. They're not going to tell you that your idea sucks. Maybe your best friend will. Depends on what kind of relationship you have. And there are lots of free resources out there. Again, things like SCORE are more if you're going to actually bring this into the business world and move beyond competition. SCORE is a great organization, and they have some good resources, especially for financial modeling. I'm not sure how everybody is taught about financial modeling and the different coursework that they have. This is an area that a lot of presentations often lack. 2 kinds of businesses. I launched a bootstrap business, which means I didn't have anybody else's money, so I did it on the cheap. I started with very small dollar amounts. I spent $150 on a credit card to buy 50 t-shirts. That was great for me to start my business as a hobby. It's not going to get investors. And the business plan competition is about investors. So while we hate words like hockey stick growth, you do need to show that you're looking to scale to be a huge business. From the Hudson Valley Startup Fund investors, we look at a line of sight on $10 million in revenue, which means that you're drawing a map that says in 5 to 10 years you think your company could bring in $10 million or more of revenue. That's interesting. That's what investors want to see. Don't do that with something that has no chance of making $10 million if you multiply the cost of the good by the number of people that are likely to buy it. But that's what you're looking for in a business plan competition. If you're building your own business, $200,000 a year in the second or third year might be awesome, but you're not likely to get investors for it, so it's not a business plan competition type of business. I can't actually speak to that in the not-for-profit or social justice space. I haven't sat on that panel before, but I know in the technology and products that we're really looking for businesses that credibly scale in that manner. So, sort of just going to repeat myself here, think like an investor. What do we want to know? We want to know how much money you need to complete your idea. We want to know what you're going to do with that money. Are you going to build a prototype? Are you going to hire a team? Are you going to use it for marketing dollars? What are you going to do with the money? Prove to me you're the right team. You guys and girls are all young and don't have a ton of business experience, if any, but your backgrounds in a business plan competition, what education are you getting? What passions do you have? What have you been doing since you were 13 or 14 that really is the reason that you're the right team? You understand the product deeply. You understand the market niche deeply. And when do I get my money back? What's the likely return? And what's the exit, which means who's going to buy me out of my investment? That is often in the form of you being acquired by somebody. Who's likely to want to acquire your company? Why does Google want to buy you? Why does Samsung want to buy you? Are you going to go public? These days, not likely. You got to be about $1 billion company to go public in most cases these days. That's an IPO. I'll hit some vocabulary later. You need to know these things. So what are the means or methods that I'm going to likely get my money back? And what type of return will I get? That one, I think if you give me a number, I know you're making it up at this early phase in an investment. So I wouldn't rely too much on that except to say, show that you have a credible path to tens of millions of dollars in revenue over 5 or 10 years, or less if you believe it. So in terms of your product idea, in terms of your team, in terms of your service, it's important to make sure that it fits with you and your team and the marketplace. So this is sort of on the research thing, but don't be afraid to pivot. If you followed entrepreneurs and businesses, you know that they pivot. I think Twitter was originally like a web page or something, not at all about text and communication. Companies pivot, and you need to pivot in your business plan as you're running down and looking at your fundamental assumptions. Don't just keep banging your head against an idea that's not working and that you stop believing in. Change, and use your team and those resources and community around you to figure out how to do that. Be open and respectful of your teammates as you're discussing these. You know, again, I know some of this is for classwork or credit. There's no such thing as a stupid idea in the brainstorming phase, but there is such thing as not facing the hard realities of what the research has uncovered. So make sure that you're respectful of each other as you're working through that stuff. 10-point program. Just going to show these here. This is basically what New York State says they want to see. I'm going to accidentally go too far. Yep, see, I told you I would. There you go. So these are the 10 slides. You want to define the problem and market opportunity. You want to tell them what your solution is. You want to tell them what your business model is, which is really, am I a product? Am I a service? Am I serving a business or an individual? The ecosystem of the product or service you're going into can be complicated. We see a lot of complicated ideas, and that's good that the deep thinking is being done. You need to communicate it clearly what your business model is and which problem you're actually solving. Who's the competition out there and what's your competitive advantage? you need to acknowledge that there is competition. You are not the only one trying to solve this problem. If you tell me that, I won't believe you and I won't give you my money, and a judge won't give you all the points you want. So I always say to entrepreneurs, go find your 100 closest competitors. They're like, there's no way. There's like 1 or 2 people working on this. All right, well, find people that are working on something like this. It's going to make your idea better. It's going to make your company better, and it's going to make you a hell of a lot more informed than your competition because they're not thinking that way. So go out there and find your competitors, and we'll show you that you want to include a few of them in your presentation to show you're thinking about it and to show why you're going to win where they're failing or where they're not solving the whole problem that you're addressing. Go to market and sales strategy. You need to show that you have a reasonable path. Sometimes that path has several tiers. Those of you familiar, there's like an Elon Musk theme going on. Familiar with Tesla, you know that he started out by making the Roadster, which was a really expensive car that he only expected to sell tens of thousands of, but it was going to fund the research for the next line of cars that he was going to sell hundreds of, or more than tens of thousands of, that funded the research for the S3, I think it is, which he pre-sold 500,000 of. That's a business model. That's a go-to-market strategy. And it's one that people are copying all over the world because it had a good idea and building blocks. You have to show what your go-to-market strategy is. I started providing kickball by having 1 league of 150 people and 7 teams for 7 weeks. And then in 3 years, there were 11 leagues, and they were in 3 cities across the US, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't plan it that way necessarily, but that's the type of thing. You have to show them your vision and that you have a path to get to that huge revenue and return. Financials and metrics, you're going to have to build a financial model. You're going to have to tell them and know yourself, what are the core financial items that I'm involved in? What are the cost of goods? What is my overhead going to be? And how does that scale over time as I grow my business? Management team, who's on the team? This is, we showed some displays about how to present the team, but you have to make sure you define who that team is, give folks a chance to introduce themselves and where they fit into the team, or have the lead presenter share that information. Risk and mitigation, I'm a little iffy on how much you do want to go in that. You do want to admit that you don't have all the answers yet, maybe, that the funds are going to help you solve these problems, and specifically what you're going to do with those funds to solve those problems. Status and next steps, I think of as more of a milestones. What is, again, my path in terms of, I've shown you my go-to-market strategy. What does that look like in years, and what capital or money might I need along the way to do that? If you have a strategy that includes multiple raises, where in the business plan competition you might be saying my first raise is $500,000 seed round, then you might say that's going to get me to the point where I'm going to raise $2 million to do X, Y, and Z, and that's going to get me to a point where I might raise more money to hit the next set of milestones. Do your research, look at some companies that you're already interested in that have gone public, or that have a lot of people following them, and you can learn about some of the paths that these companies have taken. Airbnb, Uber, all these big technology companies, you can go and see what raises they did and get an idea of what some of these really big unicorns do. We're not all going to develop unicorns, and the judges aren't going to believe you if you think you are necessarily, but it gives you an idea of how this works if you haven't already learned about it in one of your classes. And investment opportunity, again, that's, we call it the ask. How much money do you want, and what are you going to do with it? So tell me, how am I going to invest? Am I going to invest in convertible debt, which is a term it would be great if you were familiar with. It took me a while as I got into angel investing to truly get my head around it. But there are resources that you guys have at your disposal to learn about these items. So that's the 10, and I'll go into them in a little more detail the way they're presented by New York State traditionally. But a few points on pitching, which I think that Dr. Robinette's presentation probably covered a lot better than I will. But there's no recipe for a perfect pitch, so make it unique to your brand within the specifications that I'm going to provide here, and I'll show you an example of what I think is a unique in terms of they made the pitch their own. You'll see, as Dr. Robinette said, this is about conveying information, not about selling you on an idea, so mine's text heavy. I'm also a terrible graphic designer, so I don't use images. It just makes my life easier. That way I know I won't use bad images. But pitching is both an art and a science. I think we heard a lot of great science and how to apply it as an art in that first presentation by Dr. Robinette. Quality, accuracy, and completeness of content is critical. Physical presentation needs to be attractive and have interesting visuals with just the right amount of information. I completely agree. In general, we want to be text light and image heavy. Don't make an eye chart. If the text is too small to read from the back of the room, do not put it on the slide at all. You can say a ton, as I'm doing here, but I did not put all my words on the slide. My slides are my cues to remind me what I want to talk about. And I've gone over this information enough that it's ingrained in me. I know this stuff. And that's why I'm able to just use a few words and convey the meaning. Be careful not to distract from the pitch with information overload. So sometimes you can go down a rabbit hole about something that's not going to improve your score or your ability to gain an investment. So there's that balance. You really know the information, save the answer for the Q&A possibly. And storytelling ties it all together. I don't have to go into that anymore. Formatting and flow are key. The sample that I'm about to outline is just a start. Again, use those research tools to look at dozens of presentations that are out there, but be sure to include the key ingredients. So this is the format that, is this still on the web page from you guys? Well, here it is, and it'll be in my slides. Yeah. So this is basically what New York State puts out every year. They say, these are the 10 slides you should have. And I'm going to mostly agree with them. So you're going to see the slides that they provide, and then I'll just give you a little bit of overview about my take on those slides. First one, company name. That's a good idea. You should have that. I say consider a crisp cover slide or slide 0. Not necessarily introducing yourself first, but capturing their curiosity with an image or a question or something that connects them to you. As Dr. Robinette said, some of those different tactics for engaging that audience from the outset. First impressions apparently are the second most important thing. So I had that wrong. It was one of a few things I had wrong. But first impressions are definitely important. Clear appearance. You're competing with the cadets on a clear appearance. They always look awesome. Try to outdo them. Good luck. Impactful images. Content should always be on point. Make sure introducing your colleagues can be done right at the outset. There is a team slide that's recommended, usually later. You can introduce them at that point. Don't forget to introduce your teammates if you're the only speaker.
One thing, you can have a team of one person.
That's correct, right.
That is possible.
You can be just yourself, that's right. Again, you have to be able to provide credibility as yourself that you are the right person to win in the market. This is your elevator pitch, or the storytelling as Dr. Robinette outlined. So maybe that's your elevator pitch, but this is really to capture the attention, right? What is the current state of affairs that we're about to change the landscape on? And it's the lead into your story to grab folks' attention. Obviously, make it interesting. This is your chance to grab our attention. We're scribbling notes from the last presenter right now. Your job is to get us to stop scribbling those notes, right? To pay attention to what you're doing. So you're going to describe the problem. Again, these are the default, de facto, what the business plan rubric tells you should do. So that's the process I'm following. You can deviate, but you have to tackle all of this content throughout your presentation because the judges have a rubric there and they're checking these boxes off to make sure that you did cover these topics. Your problem is your most important asset. This is something that grabs our attention. It's a problem that you should be able to make us care about. If I don't care about your problem or I don't understand why you don't care about your problem, you've lost me, right? So definitely it's important to grab me right there. Make sure you can explain it and what the pain is. What is this thing that is dying to be solved, whatever it is for you? The Falcon Heavy, we haven't had a rocket this big. We're never going to get back to the moon or to Mars without it. It's clear, it's obvious. Elon's real problem, anybody know it? What real problem is he trying to solve with SpaceX? Why are we going to Mars?
He wants to conserve resources and prove that space travel is viable.
That is true. Wants to go to Mars, why?
Multiplanetary.
Multi-planetary society, that's right. We are a one-planet society. That sucks. We are this far away from being totally annihilated. Ask the dinosaurs. Elon wants us on 2 planets. He thinks it's critical, and he thinks he's the right man for the job. And so far, he's proven himself pretty close to right. So make sure you describe the pain. It's clear to me. Use impactful images again. Be careful not to come across like a solution looking for a problem. I had this really good idea for an app, and then I realized that it wasn't really solving a problem that 100 other companies hadn't already solved, right? So make sure that you're not a solution looking for a problem. Make sure to continue the storytelling, the story arc that Dr. Robinette hit. Include your personal experience, your why. Sinek, what's his name? Simon Sinek. If you have not watched Simon Sinek YouTube video on your why, Google it, watch it, love it, learn it. It's entrepreneurialism 101. It changed the way people think about how they create products and run businesses. Get the audience nodding along, right? They're buying in, they're paying attention. Physical motion actually gets people to start believing the physical motion they're doing. Again, unlike what I'm doing right now, don't overload them with information. Next slide, slide 3 that they recommend is our solution. Describe your product, explain how it solves the problem in a way that is disruptive. Needs to clearly match the problem. There can be a mismatch here. You got to iterate and work on this. Practice, give it to other folks, and figure out, am I really solving the problem I'm defining? Or do I not completely solve it? Or am I solving some version of it? This is going to resonate with the judges and the investors. It just won't connect right. But it does happen. We find ourselves in this trap. Hey, look at that. Use simple but impactful images. Are you getting a trend there? Avoid confusing the audience with complexity. Keep it simple. You know what? Communicate that the solution fully solves the problem. So your slide should show that they match. What you say should show that it fully solves the problem and doesn't leave a piece unsolved. And that could be that you need to go back and narrow your problem, right? If you're not solving your whole problem, but you're still doing something interesting, narrow the problem you're trying to solve. Say that, that's not the problem I'm trying to solve, is an answer that you can give an investor if they say, what about this? That's not the problem I'm trying to solve. The clearer the problem, the clearer you can frame the solution. If needed, consider adding a subsequent slide, nailing the key aspects of the solution. Keep it at a high level, don't spend a lot of time. And one thing on this, which might answer a question that was posed earlier about if you don't have the product, or should I give the product to them, because we see that happen on Shark Tank all the time. They make them ask them for the product, right? Make them ask for it. If they ask for it, they care. They really want to see it. Up here, what we can do, we need to control it also, because your product, if it's an app or a physical product, it might have a lot of features. It might be complex. They might not be able to intuitively figure out how to use it. Screenshots, we can control that, right? We can do 2 or 3 slides and just show them with circles and arrows that reveal themselves what's really important about our solution. There may be lots of nuances, especially if you have a well-developed application, that you don't want them just grabbing the phone and trying it, because then they get lost and next thing you know they're on Facebook. I mean, so, right? We've all been there. What was I here for? Why am I on this phone? So clear the problem, clear you can frame the solution, excuse me. Keep it at a high level. Slide 4, the market. If you're not familiar with these terms, you should become familiar with them. Total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, serviceable obtainable market. So back up the information with credible sources. This is why I think the market for this product is this big. These are the sources, asterisk, whatever Bloomberg article report gave us that information. Include relative trends supporting the market attractiveness. So if you can find research reports that say why this is a growing problem or a growing need, you should do so. Possibly include target market and market segments here. So you may not be trying to address the whole market that has this problem, but a certain portion of this market. That can move into your go-to-market strategy as well. Clearly, methodically walk the audience through. and I don't like saying these acronyms out loud, but TAM, SAM, and SOM, because they may not be familiar with the industry or this market. They may not know what you know either innately through your experience or through your research about this problem at all, and then what segment of it you think you could solve it for. And the serviceable obtainable market is really what your company can legitimately tackle. So you know you're probably talking about between 1% and 4% of the total addressable market. If there is the chance to sell $1 billion worth of this solution, don't tell the judges you're going to sell $1 billion worth of this solution. You're not going to hit every customer. Maybe you only want to hit the richest 10% of the customer. Maybe you only want to hit the neediest 10% of the customer. Whatever it is, we're not going to believe you if you tell us that you're going to sell everybody that has an iPhone this app, right? We go and look at the #1 app and how many phones it's installed on. Go and look at the #1 app in the segment that you're attacking and figure out how many phones that's installed on, and then divide it by 10, and maybe we'll believe you if you say you're going to address that size market. So communicate the market size in a way that's compelling, and that's a combination of reasonable and big numbers, right? Find big markets. Solve the problem for big markets. Next slide, business model. How are you generating profits? Who are your key customers and your target customers, and how are you going to reach them? Consider using a table to clearly segment and organize this information, because it should be a lot of information. If you have multiple revenue streams, which you should have 2 or 3 revenue streams in your business. Otherwise, you're actually a feature and not a product. You can't just have one thing to make money on, and you will realize that there are multiple ways to make money. It will take more research and experience and conversation, but show us those multiple revenue streams. I say consider including pricing, expenses, et cetera here. It should be high level, but you should definitely let me know what a unit product is going to cost, right? What your range is even. We're thinking about selling this for between $5 and $10, for between $5,000 and $10,000. Whatever that product or service is, we're going to make it that the right customer is going to be dying to pay us whatever that number is. But you need to do that so that we know so that we get from there to $10 million somehow, right? And that's going to be the story you're going to tell us. Clearly walk us through the table or mechanics. It should be intuitive to look at, but walk us through it anyway. Engage us in it. Share your excitement about it. And recap it in a different way if it doesn't seem to be resonating. This is a challenge, right? You do really have to have this information internalized, and you have to be paying attention to your audience to be able to do this. You've only got 10 minutes. So that's a real challenge. If you're actually pitching an investor, it's worth the time. In the contest, you sort of sometimes just have to go with what you have. Competitive landscape. This is where I may draw a picture on the chalkboard if we can raise that up there. As I mentioned, we won't believe you if you say you are the only one solving this problem. There are 2 primary ways that people show a competitive landscape. Thank you. It's like Vanna White or something. You can find this on other slide decks if you Google pitch slides or whatever, but there's basically 2 ways to show the competition. And this actually helps you think about your product. There are oftentimes within any marketplace 2 most important criteria about the product or about the marketplace. And it might be the cost of the solution and the simplicity to use the solution, let's say, right? And then you say, okay, between cost and simplicity of use, we're going to put cost here, and we're going to put simplicity here. And then we're going to say all the competition is over here somewhere, maybe here, and we, with our beautiful logo, are up here. You're always in the top right. If you need to switch the axes to make yourself in the top right, you're always in the top right because you're winning in the top right, and they're all losing and ambling along and failing over here. So that's one way to present the landscape and the competition, and you've shown that there is competition and you've done the research and know it, and this is why we got rid of chalkboards sometime in the 90s. The other way to do it is a table, because it's about features maybe. Maybe you can't get it down to just two things. So we have a table here, and we have all the different competition up here, company A, B, C, etc. And we have features over here, feature 1, feature 2, etc. These guys over here only get one thing right. So we only give them one X or check, probably a check. And then they get big red X's everywhere else, right? Or they get those half circles. Anybody ever read Consumer Report, full circle, half circle, whatever? We just happen to check off every box of every feature, because we only show the features that we have. And by the way, we put our most important feature first, right? So whatever we want. Some of these guys check off a few of them and get X's, etc. You get it. These are the two most common and effective ways to show that you've studied the landscape of the competition and that you have a right to win because you check all the boxes or you're in the top right. That's all you get out of me on a chalkboard. And you can find tons of versions of those online in different presentations. This is a chance to hammer home your competitive advantage and differentiation. Slide 7, and I'm about to go over time, so that's going to let me skip some of the stuff after this, but I can answer in Q&A. They say work plan, they say Gantt chart. I don't want a Gantt chart. I'm going to have to tell you, because I don't think that you know enough about the detail of the schedule to be able to provide a compelling Gantt chart. So it's okay, but consider milestones or growth stages or something that's a little more vague, maybe in quarters of a year or in months or years. But I don't know that we need to get into something that detailed. Consider they talk about financials. We would suggest maybe you put those on a separate slide. This is where you let your audience know what it's required to launch the growing business and how you're going to scale. So I prefer a go-to-market strategy, a timeline or milestones. Few startups have all that detail figured out in a Gantt chart. So I won't believe you if you provide me a detailed Gantt chart, because you don't have any money yet. So how do you know how you're going to get something done? So I don't know why they put it on there. It's a little weird. I'm going to guess that a professor put that deck together. Company, put the team on there. Consider including photos of the team. Advisors could be valuable, but don't put advisors that are not actually advisors, because we may know those people that aren't actually your advisors that you put on slides. I experienced this in the real world. If you talk to them once and did not ask them if they would be your advisor, they are not your advisor. If you asked them and they said yes, or if you asked them and said, for this competition, can I list you as an advisor? And they said yes, then they are. Here's another chance to practice your asking and begging skills. Verbal pitch, this is where you let the audience know that you have the diverse team to make it happen. If you have a gap in your team, say that you have a gap. It's what you're using some of the money for or some of the equity in the business for. If it's a key gap, like you're building a software technology and you don't have a software technology guy or girl, say that you're going to give a percentage of the business to a software technology guy or girl, and you're looking for just that right partner. Backup slides, there's other stuff that you can include in that we think is important, like financial information and capital requirements. Consider using graphs to talk about things like your key metrics and pricing. Possibly add a section called the ask. We are seeking $500,000 in convertible debt to get us to our first 5 milestones, or something like that. This is where you let your audience members know that you understand the numbers and what you need. Beyond the basics. I'm going to go through this a little fast because we're running out of time. So sales and marketing. What is the marketing strategy? How are you going to do this in a way that brings the audience to it? Unless it's obvious, you really need to show that you have a marketing plan and that you know how you're going to attract the first customer, the first 20 customers, the first 1,000 customers. I'm not usually that excited about somebody doing the math on the cost per impression or something like that, because that usually is in the tens of dollars, and the investors are looking in the tens of thousands of dollars. But if you do have big rounded numbers that you think it's going to cost you this much to get your first 10,000 monthly active users, that's interesting. What are your keys to success? Use of proceeds is, again, part of the ask to me. Exit strategy and opportunities, as I mentioned before, that's where are we going to go from here? Are we going to go public? Are we going to have somebody acquire us? Who's likely to acquire you? Who's acquired companies like you before? What gap are you filling in their portfolio of solutions, et cetera? I am just going to show you really quickly, hopefully, what pretty looks like as opposed to the deck that I am sharing with you guys. But this is the Jicama Potato Chip Company, and we had these folks pitch to us, and they made it into due diligence, which means we are interested in possibly investing in these folks, and they gave me the opportunity to share this with you. They're telling us how much they're going to raise. They're telling us about them and why they're the right people, our story. Their team slide was up front, but it is pretty. What is the market opportunity? A good amount of graphics in here showing it, a little text heavy, but just the right amount. Why this particular product or actually core component to their product, their line of products, what they've done with the consumer to validate that it's a good solution. Hey, look, it's a competition chart. They didn't have it in this order when they met us. We told them they needed to change it to put themselves first and check all the boxes. Who their customer is and that they understand exactly who their customer is. What kind of recognition and progress, traction they've already gotten with good press. More traction. Who else are they already in with? You guys are not going to be in stores with your product in a business plan competition, but you may have talked to them. If you can tell me credibly you've talked to potential clients, I'm going to love you as a judge, and I'm going to be impressed and interested as a possible investor in the future. So get those conversations started. Be brave. Competitive advantage. Why is this truly different? What they've already done. Again, they talked about their traction. Roadmap. Here's their future plans. Again, beautiful, right? But they show right there vertically. Here's a timeline of what we need to do or what we're going to do. Here's the exit opportunities. They shared it very clearly. Here are some companies that might buy us. Here's some things that have happened in the past that are similar to what we're talking about. Here's the use of proceeds. What are we going to do with the money? Nice pie chart, pretty colors. You can put this in a table. You can just list it out. It doesn't need to be overly complicated. It should not be overly complicated. This is projections. This is more detail. And I'm going to actually glide past it in the interest of confidentiality. But you can have a slide like that you don't get to in your first 10 minutes. You have it in your back pocket. It's in your appendix for the Q&A, right? They say, well, I don't think you thought enough about the numbers. You're like, well, actually, let me show you this slide. I thought a lot about the numbers, and here's what we have. So, and they ended with their contact information there.
Did they let you taste them?
Oh, these are awesome products. This is a really good product. We're big fans of these guys. And it was a big part in us actually saying that we wanted to talk to them. If the product sucked, I don't care how good your presentation is. Things that are in your control. I think that most of this, Dr. Robinette went over very well. Work on your foundation. If you haven't gotten it yet, you got to spend a lot of time before you start putting the 10 or 12 slides together. Most of that work is there, and then you put it into your slide deck, and then you iterate. Be prepared for questions and objection handling. I can go into that with anybody who is able to stay. But in general, if you don't know the answer, say I don't know and I'll get back to you, or we've been working on that. You want to be able to answer more questions. So you might get nervous. You might go down and down and down trying to explain an answer you don't really have a good handle on. Answer it as succinctly as you can. Also, if you think that your answer is a little weak, still start with the answer yes, and then explain it. Don't take 2.5 minutes to get to yes. Tell me you know the answer or don't first, or it depends, and then go into the explanation of that. But I would rather, as a judge, be able to get my question in than hear you answer 2 questions in 5 minutes. Obviously, be professional. I think that, again, this was already gone into, but they're going to size you up. You need to engage them. They're going to be looking at you. They're going to make you nervous if you have a tendency to get nervous. More practice and knowledge of what you're talking about is going to get rid of those nerves. First impressions matter, but not as much as last impressions. Make eye contact with the judges and smile. That's also important because you'll be able to read them. If you're reading your slides, you're not going to be able to read the people in front of you. So you have to get comfortable, and you shouldn't memorize your presentation rote. Some may be that's the only way they can get through it, and I understand that, but you really need to engage your audience. And remember that the judges are regular people sitting there in their underwear, right? So don't be nervous. They actually really want you to succeed. We want you folks to really have a great experience and to learn in this. It is not Shark Tank. If any judge acts like Mr. Wonderful or whatever his name is, I will trip them in the hallway. It's just so not cool. That's not what anybody's here for. Most of the judges are great and wonderful people. They may beat you up in the back room in conversations with the other judges, but hopefully they provide that feedback to you in a professional manner and you get something out of it. That's what we're all here for. Be confident, but don't be arrogant. There's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. Try very hard not to cross it because it can ruin a great pitch. Let your passion show, but don't go overboard. Don't scream up and down. You're all too young to remember Howard Dean blow his chances for president in one yelp. Look it up on YouTube. Howard Dean blows, I don't know what year election. Yeah, keep the passions in check if you're like me and get excited easily. Be prepared and have fun. This is going to be available for you afterward, and I can maybe bring it back up for folks who have questions, but this is basically homework. Once you get to see the pitch, look all these up and at least have a basic understanding of them or ask your business professor about them. Insider information. These are some of the do's and don'ts. And I'm going to just pull them all up here again because I know I've run a little over. We're skeptical about some things, and I'm going to point out I mentioned it. Cutting edge invention, we're worried that it might be really expensive. Giant killing idea means the giants are going to kill you. We have arguments about that at the Startup Fund all the time, actually, which is the right way to go. Focused experts, academics with blinders. New idea and energy, detailed execution required. Promised milestones, under-delivered results, especially in software. It happens, but that's what we expect. And that means that it's going to cost more than you're projecting it's going to cost, which means that maybe it's going to cost too much and we can't get involved in it. Needed resources, overspending on SG&A, which is your overhead cost, back office stuff. Sky's the limit. What are you smoking? What are you knocking over? The microphone. And rewards are risks, right? And that's all true. It doesn't mean you shouldn't say some of this stuff, but you need to realize that there's a flip coin to a lot of that stuff. Who should present? I think we already went over all of this exactly right. If you only have one person that speaks really well, let them do the whole presentation, have the rest of the team there to answer questions about the area that they are experts for. During Q&A, if you're going to let everybody answer, make sure somebody's acting as moderator so you're not cutting each other off. Answer questions quickly so you can answer more, and if you don't know, you don't know. Winning would be great, but the journey and experience are the true value, and that is definitely true. So you're all a little more mature than my 11-year-old son who plays soccer and basketball and baseball, and if he doesn't win, it was the worst game of his life. I hope that's not true for you folks. There's only a couple winners in each category. Obviously, we want to rise to the challenge. Getting through the experience and getting to the presentation day with a presentation intact is a success all of its own. Takeaways, because I'm supposed to remind you guys what I just spoke about. There's a lot of ingredients in a pitch, but the recipe can be unique. Use common sense throughout the process. Enjoy the journey. Believe in your concept as a business, not just as an idea. It really does matter. It makes your presentation better. It makes it more interesting to do the whole exercise. And I had thanks and good luck, but I was told I wasn't supposed to have thanks on it, so I changed my slide at the end there. And again, thanks to Tony Farid, who put together the core of this presentation for last year, and I just stole it and reused it. That's all I got. Any questions? See, I did it again. Go ahead.
All right. So since you only have like 10 minutes to present, you're kind of restricted on time. Should you like strategically leave out some information for the judges to ask?
As long as you clearly convey your idea in those 10 slides, yes, that's the complexity, right? You have to distill it down to its essence. It's a tricky question because you shouldn't be trying to outsmart the judges because A, they're pretty smart, and if they think you're trying to outsmart them, it's going to damage you on the authenticity piece. But yeah, you got to simplify. If your business plan is really complicated and you have one more thing, like you have, if you have like 5 channels of business, talk about the 80-20. Talk about the 80% that are the bulk of your revenue. Don't get bogged, and definitely don't get bogged into, and then we can go and tackle this thing, and then we can go and tackle this thing. Because we see a lot of that, and then we say, you have no focus, you don't know what you're doing. So really do focus. While you should have multiple revenue streams, you should show us that you're focused on which one you're going to tackle at what time. Does that answer that?
Yeah.
All right.
Is it okay to tell the judges or anyone who asks you a question, can you give me a second to think about it?
It is okay. Just be aware that those seconds start adding up, and you've only got 5 minutes.
We cut the judges off at 5 minutes.
Yeah, so you only have 5 minutes.
And they get frustrated and angry with me.
In the back.
Sir, in your presentation, I didn't see anything about intellectual property protection. What should we be thinking about?
Great question, and it isn't in there because it's not on the 10 slides. It is valuable to have intellectual property and intellectual property protection. Often investors and judges will ask you, what have you done, or is there a piece of this that is patentable? If you have a part of the idea that you believe is patentable, you should at least do Google patent searches, and Google patent is a separate section of Google that should automatically surface if you put the word patent in the search. But you should, if you think that part of this is an intellectual property play, you should definitely make note of that. The other side of that is some people are concerned that I can't tell you about my idea because I haven't registered it, I haven't filed the intellectual property yet. If you're not going to tell me about your idea, you can't have any of my money. So you have to be able to talk about it enough such that we can have a conversation about it. I have literally seen people try to pitch like no idea because it's such a good idea I can't tell anybody about it. I'm afraid to look it up on the internet because I know that Google's going to get my idea. Boulder Dash. The fast eat the slow in general. So yes, protect your idea, and if you have components that you believe are protectable, speak in broad strokes about it, about the idea, enough so that we can understand the problem and the solution. And oftentimes the answers that are most credible around that question is, yes, we believe there's some intellectual property in the guts of the product that we're developing or in the process that we're utilizing. We're not sharing the details that we think make that protectable. We won't sign an NDA. Most investors won't sign an NDA in early phases of a pitch. They might if you go into due diligence, an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. We see too many ideas of too many companies that are too similar to each other that it just would put us, it's not worth the time, basically, is the way some investors look at it, but it would also put us in a spot where we wouldn't be able to look at other companies should yours not turn out to be one that we're interested in. Does that answer enough on that? It is valuable to include it in there.
So you mentioned that judges will look over the pro forma pretty intensely, the figures that you project. If we're confident that our business, it has the first mover advantage in our market, would it be okay for us to be moderately aggressive in our projections for 5 to 10 years, or would you suggest?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I suggest you're aggressive. You back up a reason for your aggressiveness, right? Either because we're the only one doing this and we've seen a dire need for this in the marketplace. We've heard people, we've interviewed potential customers, and they say they would pay any price for this solution if it only existed. So absolutely, if someone else is not solving the problem or solving it completely, you should be aggressive with your price. Premium pricing is valuable to investors. Solving that problem first is valuable to investors and to customers, so you should place that premium on it, and it should be in your pro forma. Absolutely. Other questions?
Sir, we've reached out to some potential customers, and we wanted to make sure that our solution addresses their problem correctly. But as soon as we start talking, they're excited to talk about their business, but once they find out that I might be proposing something or I have an idea, they automatically get turned off. Is there a good way to get your foot in the door and start addressing it?
That's a great question, and congratulations for taking the first step and introducing yourself and getting the conversation started. I'd be curious about who you're talking to in the company in terms of why they're shutting you down as opposed to opening the doors up. My guess is that they're in the department that would be eliminated if your product solved the problem that you hope to solve. You want to be talking to their boss. You want to be talking to the person who has the purse strings that can solve the problem faster or more efficiently, as opposed to the person who you're going to put out of a job. It's my only guess on that one. It's a great question, though. All right. And, oh, okay, he's got a question.
Yeah. My name is Francis. I'm from Malawi. I've got two questions, actually. If
Okay.
you're a co-founder, could you apply on behalf of the team that you're at, simply because other team members are in different universities? That's my first question.
Yes, if they're all in college, I believe they all have to be in college, and I know Susan just walked out of the room. I believe they all have to be in college, but they do not all have to be in a Mid-Hudson college. Okay. So you can definitely do that, and you can say, and I have my remote team, and that adds some mystique and credibility. I mean, if it's Harvard or Columbia, it's obvious, but having a team that is matrixed across universities adds strength, whether it's through diversity or otherwise. So I think it's a credible thing to do.
My second question is, if you've received prior funding, is that necessary to indicate in your presentation?
I think it might disqualify you. I think prior funding. Tony, do you recall? Less than 100,000. Yep, I think that's correct, but we should verify that. And you should disclose it. Again, that's credibility. Investors want to know that they're not the first ones to the party. Someone else in.
I was just going to say, the one thing you may want to check when Susan comes back is if your partners are in New York City, I don't think you can both.
You can't compete in both regions. Right, so you can't play on two teams, basically. You can't compete in the New York City competition and the Mid-Hudson competition. Well, how much money can you have received in prior investment and still compete?
Up to 100,000.
Right, and all the team members have to be college students, but they don't all have to be here.
That's correct.
And you can't compete in two competitions if your teams are, so you have to pick one. Right, okay, great.
You did good. You did very well.
I had lots of help throughout the room. I believe in the interest of time, we'll wrap the formal part of this. I will be around for a little bit for questions until my daughter tells me I have to get home to watch the Olympics. Thank you all very much for your attention.